Today in Grow a Garden in Roblox, we have one of the craziest changes this game has seen in its entire history. I want to break it down for you. I want to help you understand what's going on behind the scenes, underneath everything in the game code, because it's breathtaking and it's going to change everything. If this sounds interesting to you, go ahead and hit that red subscribe button, become part of the first 300 KOGs on the channel, and let's get into the video. So I was rearranging my office. As you can see, I just painted it and things are coming along nicely when something popped up on the leak section of the Dawn Discord server. And this piece of information is changing the way you're going to interact with shekels, changing the way you're going to interact with your fruits and your plants, and changing the way you're going to interact with the game moving forward, which is why it's so important, and I want to break it down for you. Yeah, this is going to change a lot. This is the message in question brought to you by Caesar Salad. Changes to shekel calculation. We're talking about how the fundamental method that the game is calculating how much things are worth. And they're kind of putting, I wouldn't call it a cap on things, but I kind of will. You'll see, it's in depth. Double S says, it took me a little bit, but I figured out what the devs are doing now with the shekel calculation. Each fruit has a fruit version attribute. And these are either the number 0, the number 1, or the number 2, and are decided when the fruit was grown. Now, I don't know if you know this, I happen to have a very old, very massive fruit, a horned dino shroom. And I built it in this video right here, how to grow a $10 trillion dino shroom that breaks Grow a Garden. I did this 2 months ago. In fact, the exact date is July 15th. And let me log into the game on my alt where the horned dino shroom is held. Now, why am I talking about an old horned dino shroom? It's relevant to the conversation we're about to have. This right here is my now $35 trillion horned dino shroom that stretches all the way up into the sky like that. And now that it's in the game, let's talk about this. Old plants, which are referred to as version 0 plants in the code, have no change to their shekel calculation and behave as normal. Is my plant a type 0? It's a great question. And I'm going to find out, though I'm not going to pick the plant for obvious reasons. The devs then decided to add a 1 trillion shekel cap for any fruit, which was a version 1 fruit. So for those of you who were complaining that, hey, my fruit, whenever I go to sell it, seems to be capped at 1 trillion, you weren't wrong. It wasn't a lie. It was real. You had a version 1 fruit, which was built after version 0. Now, the time frames and the dates for these things, when's the cutoff for version 0 or version 1, I'm not sure. Let's keep reading. Double S says, I cannot pinpoint exactly when this took place, but I think it was around the prehistoric event. Now, as you can guess, my horned dino shroom, which came from the prehistoric event, was around that time. So I'm curious to see where it lands. However, because of an oversight, or maybe intentional, when you use a magnifying glass on these version 1 plants, while they're not harvested, they will display their full value. If you harvest these version 1 plants, though, I'm fairly certain they will only sell for the 1 trillion shekels. And many of you have talked about your bone blossoms having a 1 trillion shekel cap. It could be because of this, that in the game code, it was labeled as a version 1 fruit because the developers at that time were trying to slow down the economy. Now, this next point is super important because I personally don't know whether I have an old school version 0 fruit, but I most likely have a version 1 fruit. If I was to pick my horned dino shroom and try to sell it, it would probably sell for only 1 trillion shekels. But here's an important thing. Double S goes on to say, something neat I noticed is that whenever the raccoon or the kitsune dupe the fruit, they set the fruit to the latest version. If you guys have been watching my videos for some time, you've known that I've been able to raccoon farm my horned dino shroom, and until recently, I haven't tried in a little while, but I was able to raccoon farm the horned dino shroom and get the full value every single time. Now, that's because the raccoons were doing the most recent version. So after version 1, where there's a $1 trillion cap, they made another version, another modification to the code where that cap no longer existed. So there's a weird time frame in the middle where there was a cap. But the raccoons and the kitsunes, they didn't care. The developers were like, yes, we know we love our raccoons, and our raccoons are our precious children. They're going to ignore the cap, which is why I've been raccoon farming this thing endlessly for forever for infinite shekels at full value. But let's keep going. This is what led to the rumor that raccoons were being nerfed and stolen fruits capped at 1 trillion, though I never personally encountered this, so maybe my horned dino shroom is a version 0. It might be a version 0. If you had raccoons farm your big dinosaur or your big bone blossom or your big whatever, and even the fruits taken from that bone blossom by the raccoon were capped. If you had capped fruits, let me know. And nobody noticed until raccoons copied the plants because the magnifying glass was wrong. Okay, now let's move on to version 2 of plants. Version 2 is the current version all new plants will be on. New plants, not what I have now, but new ones. This was updated fairly recently within the last 4 weeks or so. If you have old version plants, the OG plants or version 1 plants, in your inventory or unharvested, they will keep the same value. Now, I'm going to test this. I haven't raccoon farmed my horned dinosaur in some time, and according to the code, the raccoons will always harvest it based off of the current update of the version. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen when I raccoon farm my horned dinosaur that I built back in July 15th. However, if you pick them, then the fruit that grows in its place will be updated to the version 2. Version 2 is a bit unique, and this is kind of what I want to talk about because the game is changing and changing for forever. Instead of a hard cap on shekels like version 1, it imposes a soft cap for fruits over 1 trillion shekels following a predetermined curve. So it seems like any fruits made now or grown now are version 2 of the fruits. And these fruits will be able to hit 1 trillion shekels, no problem, on your normal linear curve. But once they hit 1 trillion shekels, things are going to level off. And the more mutations you put on it, the less and less of an effect it's going to have on those fruits. There's going to be diminishing returns over 1 trillion shekels or so. Let's keep reading though. Now here's a too long didn't read that Double S posts. This only applies to fruits over 1 trillion shekels value, which is why most people will probably never notice. If you have old plants, it says 1+ months, and mine are 2 months old. Do not pick them. Any plant worth 1+ trillion when duped by a raccoon will be worth less than the magnifying glass says after crossing the 20 trillion mark. That's interesting. I have a $30 trillion dinosaur. We're going to see shortly whether it actually works, regardless of how old the plant is. Ooh, this is interesting. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take out my barn owl army. I'm going to go and grab my 15-second peacock army. I'm going to pick up the bald eagles, and I'm going to put down a single raccoon. I only need 1, right? I'm going to go grab a random rack. Do I have a rack in my inventory there? No. Give me a random raccoon. Let's grab this inverted raccoon because it looks cool. I'm going to slap him down there. And the inverted raccoon, with the help of the peacocks, is going to farm this thing very, very quickly. I mean, right now it says 14 minutes. That's only going to take a couple of minutes because of the peacocks. So while we're talking, that guy's going to bring me a fruit. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to sell all my current fruits on me, make sure I have nothing in my inventory, only the one I'm going to receive. And we're going to see if it does decrease from the 35 trillion it's worth, if it does come down a little bit or not. I'm curious. And while that's happening, let's keep reading what Double S has to say. So here is like the summary of what he's talking about. If you don't feel like reading all of that, here are the key takeaways. Version 0 plants, probably at least 2 to 3 months old, are normal. That might be mine. Let's keep reading. Version 1 plants, roughly a month old, have a hard 1 trillion shekel cap. So those of you who are experiencing the cap, you weren't crazy. It was a real thing. Now, version 2 plants that are current have a soft cap above 1 trillion shekels using a curve. From then on, the higher the value, the more the reduction, but there's never a full cap, which I guess is better because a hard cap feels horrible. Raccoons and kitsunes always update fruit to the latest version, which is why there might have been a 1K cap temporarily, and now fruit values over 1 trillion won't be the same as a magnifying glass. And we're going to test that right now. If you have plants from roughly after the prehistoric update to before the fall update that are worth 1 trillion plus, do not pick them, otherwise they will be capped at 1 trillion. And this is the code, the math that explains everything. Here is how you can calculate the version 2 plant value. You plug in the magnifying glass value and it will give you what it's actually worth. Here is the code if you actually want to take a look at it. Jump into the Dawn Discord server if you want to look at this yourself. So new plants will have, oh, my raccoon. No, there's carrots. I gotta loot all the carrots. I'm so dumb. 1 second, guys. I was doing carrots to grab mutations, so there's no mutations I need on my horned dinosaur. Okay, now the raccoon's going to do his job. It's so dumb. Thank you, raccoon, for this fried, drenched, shocked, junk shot carrot. So I'm really curious to see just how hard the scaling and the plateauing of value is going to be. This is probably to prevent people from getting shrooms and bone blossoms into the quintillions. This might actually make a massive dent over time in the entire shekels economy. I wonder if those quintillion level bone blossoms have been nerfed severely. I wonder if we're finally going to see shekels slowly come out of the economy. I wonder if things are going to go back to normal because of this. Now, I'm curious to see if this lovely raccoon here who got his cooldown reduced. Oh, look, he's already off. He goes. I'm curious to see. This is clutch. Will he give me this dino shroom worth 35 trillion? Will it sell for less than that? Or will I receive full value on this dino shroom? Now, oh, it's a big dino shroom. Having said that, the people who created the quintillion size bone blossoms, those are much, much, much more recent and are probably affected by this. But let me grab this humongous. Honestly, it looks that big, but if you switch to the alt and you look into the sky, you can see the dino shroom going way up there, wiggling in the sky. It's massive. Oh man. All right, let's sell this. Let's first see if he tells me the value. So the magnifying glass reveals 35 trillion. This was built back on July 15th. I'm going to first ask him, how much is this worth? He says 25 trillion. It knocked it off. So the raccoons, even on plants farmed and created more than 2 months ago on July 15th, there is, you saw immediately a 10 trillion difference. There is a suppression of the value of these things. It's not limited to 1 trillion, but it is slowed down. So I wonder if something was worth into the quadrillions, into the quintillions, into the sextillions, just how hardcore does that level off? In the trillions, it only leveled off, what is that? 25 divided by 35, that gives us a roughly 30% reduction in the value of my horned dino shroom. So leveled it off by 30%. If you go even higher in values, I don't have access to higher values. I don't have any fruits worth quadrillions or quintillions or sextillions. Does it level off even more hardcore? Is it greater than an even 30% reduction? Is it a 50, a 60, an 80% reduction? All of a sudden, is something in the sextillions of plant in the sextillions worth way down in the quadrillions? I don't know. I don't have access to those types of things. If you have access, if you have grown, even using the Nihon bug, I don't care. Yes, you use the Nihon bug. The only way you could grow these massive plants. If you grew massive plants worth quintillions, sextillions, quadrillions, I don't care where it is. If you have something like that, can you tell me in the comments down below, your now raccoons, just how hardcore the reduction was? Can you tell me the magnifying glass value? And then can you tell me the sell value of the fruit? Don't pick it, use raccoons, but let me know. I want to know just how hardcore the reduction goes, if this is a way of reducing the shekel inflation and fixing things. So as you can see, reductions are in the game. If you have a type 1 plant, you have a 1 trillion shekel reduction, a 1 trillion shekel cap, hard cap. However, if you're growing something now, or even if you grew something way back in the day and using raccoons, there is a soft cap and it will reduce the value of your stuff and prevent you from making something completely insane. Hopefully this will help the economy moving forward. If this video was valuable to you guys, go ahead and hit subscribe, become part of the first 300 KOGs on the channel. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching.